This guy just has a really cool story, and I know I mentioned it before. I ran across him because of Shohei Ohtani, and actually I want to talk about one particular year where he just stood out. Maybe, we heard last year with Ohtani as the MVP that was something that had never been done before. It was maybe the best individual season in the history of baseball, and that's just flat out wrong. Wes Ferrell did this in 1935. He actually had a single season WAR that was higher than Shohei's last year. His single season was 10.1 in 1935, and it may be the greatest season that most people have never heard of. That WAR that he had as a 10.1, and actually I read an article, it was 10.6 at that time. I think they've since made some adjustments to the WAR, but they said this was the highest single season WAR since Babe Ruth's 1927 year, where he actually hit 60 home runs. So from 1927 till 1935, that was the last time somebody had a single season that was that impressive, and it was quite some time after 35 before somebody else did the same thing. He actually had 25 wins that year, 13 extra base hits as a pitcher. His batting average, I believe, was .347 that year with 7 home runs, an OPS of 960, and he was the MVP runner-up that year in 1935.
Why do you think Wesley Ferrell is not in the Hall of Fame and his brother Rick is in the Hall of Fame? What do you think the strongest case is for that?
So there were a couple of things about Wes and his temperament, where he actually got fined for walking off the field at one time. And there were a couple other of issues with him with managers. And the other thing with Rick is that I believe he did a lot for the community. Not that Wes didn't. Wes, I think, did some things after he played as a major league ball player, but I'm pretty sure Rick did a lot of other things in baseball, coaching for the community and things like that, where that may have kind of pushed him over into making the Hall of Fame. And there's a lot of fake news out there, actually, because when I heard a little bit more background about what happened with him getting all pissed off one time, the time that he left, it was a misunderstanding. He thought the manager told him was pulling him, so he left and walked off. And that got straightened out, because I actually read a really cool article from Wes, talks about Babe Ruth's wife, meeting her, how Babe Ruth commented on how Wes actually was hard to hit off of, and he thought that was really cool. And the other issue with one of the managers I thought was kind of interesting was, Wes was a workhorse. I think he pitched more complete games out of anybody in the 1930s. He had some arm issues, but he would still push through it. And there was one time where I want to say he maybe pitched a game, whatever it was, he was pitching a lot of innings, and the manager came up to him after the game and asked him why he didn't give him his all, and he was like, yeah, he was like, dude, he's like, how many games I just pitched?
And I took that personally.
Took it personally. So then, I don't know exactly how that conversation went, but his next start, he was getting hit kind of early on, and the manager came out and pulled him out right away, and that was just like, he's like, man, I'm out here pitching all these innings. And he I don't think he was a very competitive guy, and I don't think he would go out there and do anything half-assed. It didn't sound like from the book that I've been reading on him, his brother, and everything else. So, I think he took that personal. And the other thing is, once you get a reputation, it's like people write about it all the time. The same thing happened with Ty Cobb. So it turns out he was not nearly as bad of a guy as a lot of people said back in the day. And think about it now, these newspapers are trying to sell papers. I mean, that's literally it. There's no other news. There's the radio and there's newspapers, and if they can sell a story or sell an angle, Ty Cobb's the meanest guy in baseball, Wes Ferrell's got a temper and he can't get along with anybody else, and so people start writing about that every time they mention somebody, and it's like, even if it's not true, once you get that everyone gets that impression or what have you. That's just kind of seems so. That may be some of it, and then at a certain point, how many people are looking back at players from the 1930s? At a certain point, you get so far from, and there's really not even much video. It's like baseball's
Right,
so
yeah.
old. It's like how you got to start looking at newspaper. It's just like you get so far away from the time that you played. People don't really think about it anymore, and they kind of get forgotten about, unfortunately. And if you don't get in that sweet spot, I think his closest most votes was when he passed away. Or maybe I might have been thinking about somebody else, but either way, at a certain point you pass away, you don't make it. It's like
the flip book generation. There goes Babe, rounding third base.
right, exactly.